You're a group leader, you're sitting in your group, and somebody shares about this deep struggle, this sin, this recurring thing that's been happening over and over and over again. Maybe it's a substance or an experience or a feeling that they just can't kick. And you're listening and you're listening, and then it's time for you to respond, and you're like, oh man, I've got no clue what to do here. Have you ever been in that situation? Maybe you're a group leader and you're just like, how do I actually help this person? Well, that's what we're talking about today. We've got Jon Ruby with us again for part 2. Let's dive in. Hey guys, I'm Steve, and this is Level Up, the monthly dose of leadership training that will help you take your group to the next level. This month, we've got Jon Ruby with us again. He was with us last week for part 1 of the addiction series, The Problem and the Solution of Addictions. If you haven't watched that video, make sure you go back, watch that one first. It's going to really inform this video. But today, we are talking about group leaders. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's get it.
Let's dive right in. So, Jon, I'm sitting in the room. A group member shares with me that they got something going on. How do I even... Like just diving right in, right at the start, how do I even know that what they're struggling with is an addiction?
Well, I think number one is don't be too shocked. Don't be freaked out.
Yeah.
And just understand that you don't have to have all the answers, and you just have a listening ear, because they might be sharing something that they've never shared. There's a lot of confusion around addiction. There's a lot of confusion of what's happening in them and to them. And you're just providing a listening ear and trying to give some understanding and some insight to them. And so I would love to equip you. I would love to equip you with, like, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So are there some factors maybe that I can look for that might say, oh, okay, this might be an addiction. This might be how I need to approach it. What are some of those factors, even when somebody comes to you and they're saying, this is what I'm going through, that you say, oh yeah, that's an addiction. Here's how I need to deal with it.
And I think it's just like in the physical world, you bring your physical car into the mechanic. You want him to diagnose all the problems. When you turn 50 this year, you get some tests that you have to go and get some diagnosis to. So I would always want to qualify somebody with what the problem is. And so if there's a serious substance abuse, maybe they're smoking weed, or they're drinking in the evenings, and, a couple glasses of wine, they're experiencing more cravings, and they're doing it outside of what they would really want to be doing. And so you might want to qualify them in this way. So once they put this substance in their body, it could be relationships as well. It could be pornography. Yeah. And so we want to know what's happening on the inside of them. So what you're going to ask is, when you do this behavior, can you control it all the time?
Okay.
Are you able to just take 1 or 2, and what are you looking for? Are you looking for a sense of relief? Are you looking for something out of this substance, or that relationship, or this clicking on the mouse? Or, like, why are you going to that in the first place? And so then I'm looking at what it's doing to them and for them.
Okay.
And so they would probably be caught up in what it's doing for them. So I'm always asking, like, when you do this activity, what's it doing inside of you? What's it doing for you? Is it quenching something that's speaking to you out here? This is how you want to be taking a break all the time? And then when you do this, is it producing a craving for more? Because and maybe you're not alcoholic, I am. So when I have this alcoholic body, when I drink, it produces a craving for more. It's an abnormal reaction, because you never experience that.
Right.
You get a little tired, you get a little sleepy. I get amped up.
Right.
Like, I'm on number 2 going for number 8. And it's kind of like, if we're abandoned at sea, heaven forbid, you and me in a rubber dinghy, and it's like we're 10 days in, do not drink the salt water. And we're just cheering each other on, don't drink the salt water. And then it's like we see ever living water all around us. And I'm like, I'm weak. I take the first sip.
Right.
Behind your back. I'm not going to let you know. And what's happening is my body is saying that this is inside of me. There's too much salt. I need to get rid of it. So I dilute it, and I have to pee it out. So I'm actually dehydrating myself faster than without you even drinking. And so my body isn't able to break down this substance inside of me. So it's producing, I need more of it. and I need more. So when I'm drinking a beer or an alcoholic beverage, I drink one or two, and then I get more thirsty. And so it's this delusion that I'm controlling it, and I change my mind. Oh, I wanted to maybe 8 o'clock, get the kids into bed, but I'm still drinking. I've changed my mind. That's actually a sign that you're not in control. So we live in this delusion of like, I'm actually controlling it when I'm not controlling it. I'm just changing my mind, or boys will be boys. And sometimes we like to blow off a little bit of steam and, oh yeah, I just decided to stay at the pub a little bit longer. That kind of thing.
That's good.
That shows that I'm lacking control.
That's good. So as a group leader, I need to be thinking, is there a delusion here, right? Is this person making excuse? I'm wearing the shirt. You can't flex excuses.
Yeah.
Is this person actually making some excuses here? Have they made a decision, and then are they going back on it and starting to try to identify where they might be in denial or delusion? Is that right?
And so to qualify, you have a physical abnormality, but then you have a mental.
Okay.
So why can't somebody stop doing something destructive to their relationships, their marriage, their, ability to drive, all of those things? Like, why do they keep going back to it? And so this is what I'm trying to look for is, are you powerless over this substance? And we're talking about real addiction. If the person doesn't have these components, they just need some more discipline. They need some more structure. They need some spiritual activities. They need to change maybe some of their friends and where they're going and hanging out. And you can guide that. Mm-hmm. The one thing that we have outside of the medical profession, outside of psychiatric profession, outside of medicine, is that we have a line of transmission. And so if I have this problem that has, destroyed my life and now I've recovered from it, I can actually do more for you as somebody with the same problem as any doctor in this world could ever do. It's called line of transmission.
That's really good, because what that says to me is that as group leaders, if we want to have that line of transmission to another group member who might be struggling, what we really need to do is we need to ask ourselves the questions first. Where is this kind of addiction mentality showing up in my life, and deal with it in my own heart first with God? I need to be fully reliant. If you go back to the first video that we did from last month, I need to be taking myself out of the director's chair of my own life and putting God in that director's chair. Once I've done that with my own life, I can also then go and help some other guys with their own lives. Right?
And you can ask some leading questions. I think of all of our rooms in the winter and the summer. It's like we have a thermostat and there's a thermometer. Yeah. And so I like to bring that up of like, I want to be a thermostat. I want to change the ambient temperature of the room. I don't want to be going up and down with any temperature. So I would ask the question of, what's controlling you? Is anything controlling you? Do you have control over it, or does it control you? Okay. And then the other one is I read a story, and it's about these farmers in Africa, and they have these little monkey pests, and these monkeys come in and they just wreak havoc on the crops and stuff. So they build a little rock pile, put a post in the rock pile that's into the ground, and then they put a chain and a coconut. They hollow out a coconut, put a tiny little hole in it, and then put monkey's favorite treat in there. And so they actually watch the monkey come up, put his hand in and grab it. And then the monkey's trying to get his hand out, but the hole is so small that in a fist form, he can't get it out. All he has to do is release his hand and escape to freedom. And so the farmers will actually come, little monkeys pulling, and the farmer just grabs him, right? Shakes him out, gets whatever's in his hand out, and then they release him into the wild. Wow. And I would ask that question, what are you holding on to? Right. What are the things that you're gripping and imminent danger is coming for you, but you can't let go of? And you've tried this over and over again. And just for group leaders, you don't have to be an expert in any of this. You don't have to have this line of transmission of, being a pill popper or a porn addict or a food addict, but you can bring them to a place that we can offer that.
That's good. Yeah. You almost want to bring them to a place of realization that they actually are holding on to this thing in the coconut too hard, right? And asking questions to help get to that place of realization. Yeah. Is that fair?
For them to be able to implement what recovery actually is.
That's good. So, let's go there. How can we then, once the temperature has been taken, once the problem has been realized, once we've kind of asked those questions and helped them realize that problem, if they do, then what's the next step? How might we actually support them in taking steps toward recovery?
Well, we have a workshop called Life Lab.
Yeah.
So that can bring somebody into it's pretty serious. So they would have to know the depth and the weight of their problem to adhere to this solution. And so we actually look at the real problem. We discuss that for 12 sessions. And then we go into this inventory of really understanding what's in here in my heart and the corner store of my heart. And I need to get rid of it for the things of God to be put on there.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole thing is transactional. I'm giving my life for the life God has for me. So walking them into a workshop like that, I think some people get guided into 12-step resources or churches or that kind of thing. The reality is they have a problem that is unsolvable by man and only solvable by God. So I need to lead people into a proper relationship with God. And just because you have a belief in God, it doesn't give you power inside of you.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, there's a ton of people, and I was one of them for sure, and still am tempted back toward that, who have a relationship with God or have a said relationship with God, but maybe aren't experiencing that and living that on a daily basis because there's a bunch of stuff in the way, right? Taking that time from our time with God, taking that connection away, separating us, if you will. This is great, Jon. So as a group leader, though, I'm going to sometimes encounter some really, really serious addictions, some really serious situations. And there's going to be times, I think, where I'm going to say, I actually don't think this is the right context. Like, I don't think we can really help them the way they need to be helped as a group. So how do we know when we are ill-equipped, when we need to find somebody else or another situation or circumstance or organization or program that would be able to help them in the way that they really need?
Yeah. So when you're doing the qualification and if they're just trapped in it and their addiction is habitual every day, there is a place for a recovery center. There's a place, especially when it comes into food disorders and, alcohol and drugs. They actually need a place to go to get rid of the physical compulsions. And so you can help them implement that. I would really caution everybody to know that you're not God. And so your job is to guide them into a relationship with God. And so that can be done through a treatment center, a rehab center, and you actually help them. You can get some numbers, but they actually have to do the work.
That almost sounds like a warning for us to make sure that with others, we're not actually stepping into the role of being their fixer, right?
Yeah. And that can so often happen. And so as you're working with others, as others have needs, you really, you come in and be the hands and feet of Jesus. You're giving them encouragement. You're giving them practical resources. And what happens is you might get to a point in this relationship that you want something more for them than they actually want. And that's where you have to really set boundaries. That's where we get into codependent enmeshed relationships. So just know that, my boundary is where they stop and I start. That doesn't necessarily have to be touching. That boundary could be a little farther back. And so there are some times in some situations you actually have to step back from the relationship at some level.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. It's interesting because at Next Level, in Next Level groups, we're always focused on staying in the relationship long term, being alongside the person. But that's going to look different depending on what the situation is, right? It's not always going to be investing, calling every day, texting every day, being like, you almost try to become their savior in doing that, and we need to be real careful of that, right? So maybe that love and that support and that long-term relationship is going to look a little bit different depending on what the person is struggling through.
That's really good.
So I mean, we've got people who have let's just call it serious, very obvious addictions, right? And it's drowning them. They're drowning in it. It's super obvious. They've been in it for years. Maybe they're even close to the point of physical death or maybe spiritual death. They're just feeling that, right? We've got those people, but there's also people in our groups, maybe this is even the majority, that are, let's call it on the cusp of an addiction, or maybe involved in like I don't want to call it minor addiction, but something that's got control of their lives in some way, right? So how can we as group leaders, maybe they don't need to go to a treatment center, maybe they don't need like a full reset of their whole lives in some way, but how do we address that as group leaders? Where do we want to take them?
I think that most people don't need a rehab center, but maybe a timeout. Maybe I know that God wants to get people alone, and all of the distractions of work and of family, all of that stuff can really just cover up the real problems.
Right.
So even taking some time off work, just suggesting a 2-week period where you're just sitting in it and see what happens, or a month or 3 months off work. I would suggest that to a lot. I've suggested that to a lot of people, not to go to a treatment center, but if you just take some time off work, set amount of time, and then just come up with a plan, go see a doctor, that kind of thing. God has a lot of place to work with.
That's really good. And I want to say, if you've got something in your life as a group leader, or if you see something in a group member's life, what's more worth it? Continuing with your regular routine, going, and hoping something terrible isn't going to happen, hoping stuff isn't going to hit the fan? Or is it more worth it to actually do what you said, Jon, to stop, to pause, to take some time to step away, to be quiet, to hear from God, to listen to him, to reset your life in the way that you truly need, and then to move on? I think it's the latter, right?
Yeah.
I think it's the taking the step back and not continuing in the distraction and the busyness and the craziness, right?
It's biblical too.
Yeah.
The promise was, when I leave, Jesus leaves, I'm going to send the helper. And so you see the men and women, the children of the Father, they go into the upper room and wait. And they waited in prayer and thanksgiving and petition, and they were waiting for the power. They didn't leave the room until the power came. And so that's a good little narrative that we can include in our helping others, of just take some time. Like, what does that look like? I want to stand beside you. I want to walk with you. So what are you willing to do? How can we interrupt these cycles and really get the help and for God to illuminate you?
That's really good. And then that comes right back to, you said, what are they willing to do? Is there an actual willingness in that person to deal with the thing that's going on in their lives? And that's the key. Otherwise, we're just going to be trying to take on that willingness for them, and that doesn't work, right?
And the other end of it is, well, I've tried everything, so what's the point?
Right.
That is somebody that's coming into agreement with their addiction. And so why bother trying anything else? You're actually saying, oh no, I'm quite happy where I am. It's just coming from a different language. So I would really point that kind of thing out. Like, it's not about trying everything or failing again. Oh, what if I do this last thing and it fails again? Yeah. Well, you're not willing to do something to interrupt it. And so I'm always inviting God's power into this, and being able to pray for anybody struggling. I think that's our number one weapon against the enemy, is just, in my daily time, is I'm seeking encouragement and love for them. And so how do I have love for them? Through my own morning time. How do I get poured out to be filled again, so that I can really encourage and lead somebody into the wholeness of a relationship that will solve all their problems?
Oh man, this is gold. We can't give what we don't have. We need to be filled up before we can pour out, right? That's so good. Jon, this is great. Thank you so much for helping us to grow in our lives and our connection with God, and helping group leaders to be able to help others as well. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Guys, if there is something going on in your life that needs to be dealt with, don't delay. Don't put it off. Deal with it today. Bring it to God today. What Jon and I want for you is for you to have the deepest connection with God, and what comes from that, the most satisfaction really that you've ever experienced in your life. That's going to come from your connection with God through the Lord Jesus. He is the hope of the world. He is the one that's going to give you new life, and give the people in your groups new life as well. So turn to him even today. And then, if you've got somebody in your group who's wrestling, who's struggling, I'm sure you can point them toward Jon, point them toward myself. We'd be happy to encourage them in some way. But if they're really struggling, would you be in prayer for them, intentionally bringing them before the Lord each day? That is going to be, as Jon said, the biggest thing that we can do. Yeah. Bless you guys. Thank you so much for your week in and week out encouragement in your group, the ways that you invest, the ways that you pour in, the way that you pray. We love you, and we're so grateful for you. Thanks.